Okay, my topic is pandemic detection and early warning application for artificial intelligence, data and genomics. So my background is in data science and bioinformatics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what has been done in the field of artificial intelligence, data, and genomics in pandemic preparedness, and how can we apply that in GCBR, okay? Next slide. So before I even go into my talk, I would like to explain what data is, what is artificial intelligence, enabled pandemic detection and application of genomics. Next slide. That's data. When we talk about data, we always know about data as being structured data in form of spreadsheets. That's what most of us know about data. But data, in the real world, we have different types of data. And there are three types of data that we have. We have structured data, we have unstructured data, semi-structured data. And in medical, in public health, we have all those types of data and we use them. And then also, where does the data come from? We have data come from internal and external. Internal data is the one that you produce within an organization. And external data just comes from outside, for example, from the government population statistics and so forth. So you have three different types of data, and then you have two sources of data. So I'm going to spend some time explaining what is data. Next slide. So the most common type of data that we know is structured data. So this is just highly organized, but basically in a type of spreadsheet. So for example, we have this patient information. The first column basically is the numbers from 1 to 21. The second column basically is date of birth. Sometimes it's a medical form. Sometimes they give their date of birth, sometimes they don't. And then you have the gender, male and female. And then for this one, you have an appointment. Some are general ed person and so forth. And then the visits type. Some are returning and some are new. So this is structured, okay? Next slide. Unstructured data. Unstructured data is, they're basically, they don't have any structure, that's what they're structured. For example, they contain dates, they contain numbers, they contain images. For example, Twitter's data. So people can mine this type of data and use it. And we have this type of data also in public health, have them in medical field. So next slide. Semi-structured data. So semi-structured data, you have both structured and structured. It's kind of in the hybrid. So sometimes when you have a doctor report, you can have sometimes written by hands, and sometimes you have information that are put in rows and columns. Those are semi-structured data. Okay, so that's it about data. So we have three types of data: structured, unstructured, semi-structured. We have two sources of data that come from internal and external. So in medical field or public health, we have tons of information from data, and how can we use that? Next slide. So this now takes me to artificial intelligence. What artificial intelligence? So the concept of artificial intelligence was developed like 50 years ago, started by computer scientists asking this question: can computers be made to think like humans? Okay, so basically, you can see the cycle there. You have artificial intelligence, and then within artificial intelligence, you have machine learning. Then machine learning now have the methods of machine learning. So basically, artificial intelligence is automated intellectual tasks normally performed by humans. So Instead of that task being performed by humans, now performed by machine, and machine is basically computer. Within that, now you have the machine learning. So what's machine learning? So machine learning comes from this question: could the computer go beyond whatever we order it to perform and learn specific tasks? For example, how does it do that? You did by training. You give the computer, basically a machine, that, okay, I have this information in data, and these are my patients who are maybe have cancer, and these are patients who are cancer-free, and they have all these different type of variables. So you feed that in the computer, and then it learns. In the future, when you get patients, you feed the variables from the new patient in the computer, in the machine, and then it will tell you whether that's a potential cancer patient or that is not a potential cancer patient. But the problem with machine learning or AI, you have to have the correct type of data, because garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have good type of data, you're going to have bad models. We are having this problem in the US because most of the models are being built a certain type of race. So now if you apply it a certain type of race, the model doesn't work. So with machine learning, it's not a magic bullet. You have to have the right type of data, you have to have a representative. If you have a very good representative, you're going to get good models that can predict for you good outcome. But if you don't have good data, then machine learning doesn't work. Okay? So that's the caveat of machine learning for artificial intelligence.
When you say machine learning, are you talking specifically about neural network?
Oh, machine learning, the methods, under methods you have neural networking, you have logistic regression, you have multi-regression, all these type of methods. You have supervised methods and unsupervised methods. The machine, you see the cycle. You have started with artificial intelligence, and then you get to machine learning is the method that is going to, under the machine learning, you have the method. So the method has all these type of different. So under the method, you have what's called classification and regression. So classification basically classify things based on type of kind of like groups. And the regression basically classify based on numbers. Okay. Thank you. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay, so how can you use machine learning or AI? So because of the type of data that we have, now we can use this to explore these types of data that are basically unstructured. So we have now used these analytical tools that can analyze text, it can analyze images like MRI images, it can analyze videos. So all this is providing us with information that we can use for detection, response, and prediction. We can also now simulate the complex setup, the scenario, so that somebody asked me when Peace gave a talk that how do you plan? You can use machine learning. You already have data. So use the data, historical data, then you can plan. You can train those new technologies for the future use in pandemic preparedness. Okay. Next slide. Okay. So I'm going to divide this into the type of data, the type of machine learning, and what can be done from, what can we get from that. So we have two types of data that we can use in basically from medical or public health. We have a type of data what we call physical. These are kind of like health data, environmental data, society, economic, and others. And we have cyberspace data. You can have blogs, social network, and others. And now you have different types of machine learning. You have unsupervised machine learning. So unsupervised machine learning, basically what it does, you get your data, you put in the computer, and computer cluster for you. And then they supervise You tell, for example, I talked about the cancer and non-cancer patient. You label those, and then you train, and then in the future, it does it for you. So these are some of the methods for unsupervised cluster analysis, principal component analysis, and then the supervised, you have the support vector machine, random forest, and deep learning. So the type of data that have been used to estimate high risk of a region, you get information from the health and then from environment, and then it can predict for you which areas have very high region of pandemic. And also, it can also predict for the length of the outbreak. And now when you use the cyberspace like internet data, you can use keyword search. I also showed you that Twitter, you can use Twitter data. That has been used for rapid infectious disease response. You can also use text data for sentiment analysis. Next slide. Okay. You can also use syndromic or presyndromic disease surveillance. So, for example, when you go to hospital emergency room, they just give you some information about what you're suffering from. Okay, you can also get information from over-the-counter medication. You can even get information on how sales of medication is being done. You can use all those information, including the social media. So that will be your data. Then you can use the machine learning approaches. And for example, a few years ago, Google predicted where flu outbreak was going to be in the US by using only following people using social media. So they tracked and they were able to predict accurately where the next flu pandemic was going to happen. So with that, we can apply this type of technology to GCBR. Next slide. Okay, we now have public hospital, even government, they're now using information from internet. They're using information from social media to have warnings of pandemic. So they have mass data from the cloud. They're trying to use that so that they can try to predict pandemic. They can even use text messages. They say a natural processing language called LNP. You can use just information written on the text to do surveillance. Next slide. Okay, so the last few slides I was talking about physical data. Now I'm going to talk about genomics data. So genomics, basically, you're getting information of the DNA, the RNA. So the genomic data is now becoming one of the fastest and the easiest method of detecting. So for example, you can use the whole genome sequencing. For example, please talk about using nanopore for sequencing in the field. So you can analyze the entire genome. For example, now in the US, the hub labs that their work is to analyze the entire genome of different variants of COVID-19 virus. So they have all this. So using the whole genome sequencing, you can find the origin, the evolution, all this information about the organism that's going to cause pandemic. Another is metagenomics. So metagenomics can help, except for when they're working with One Health, because One Health, disease can go from animal to human. So you can use metagenomic to find the source of maybe where the pandemic came from. You can go and use metagenomic, and within hours, you can find exactly where that source came from. You also use shotgun sequencing. So shotgun sequencing is now used to identify, to detect new viruses or new pathogens that can be a potential for causing GCBR. Next slide. So these are some of the references. Next slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stephen, for that wonderful presentation. Any questions for Dr. Stephen? If you're online, you just have to raise your hand and I'll pick on you to ask the question.
Thanks, Dr. Steve, for this presentation. Indeed, there is very new issues for me. And there is very important regarding if we can apply this for the early warning or the prediction of the diseases. This is very wonderful indeed. Because we need to be proactive rather than reactive. My questions, indeed, because this is very new. I know, or I heard about the deep learning. In your presentation, put the deep learning under the machine learning. Is the deep learning considered a method of the machine learning, or it is the advanced evolutions of the machine learning?
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, deep learning is a method of machine learning. It's basically a neural network, but because they're using very, very many large data sets, so they're not trying to involve different algorithms. It's just a method of machine learning. It's like regression for support vector machine. Yeah. You're welcome.
Any other question?
Sure.
All right.
I think this morning one of the presentator, I think, speak about maybe doing cartography of pathogens, high-risk pathogens. Is it possible to associate this cartography with sequencing data?
I didn't answer.
Maybe, you know, when doing the cartography of pathogens for Africa,
yes.
You know, you speak about Kenya,
yeah.
But I think the question, if you can have it for Africa. So the data that will be in this cartography, is it possible to associate, you know, data also for, you know, pathogen sequencing so that you can trace, you know, this pathogen that is present in this area, you know, come from the same thing you have in the other region, something like this?
Definitely. Yeah. In the afternoon, I have a presentation that I think might cover that. Okay. So as long as the good thing with metagenomic sequencing, you don't have to culture. So what used to limit people in the lab was culturing, but now you don't have to culture. You just do next generation sequencing. Then you can either identify the pathogen that has already been known, or you can identify a novel pathogen. And then that novel pathogen can be a good pathogen or a bad pathogen.
Not a question for you, but an illustration of where this can take us. In the United States, there's a supermarket, not a supermarket, a big store called Target. And they sell everything from pharmaceuticals to clothing to household goods, that sort of thing. And they started using machine learning for their marketing purposes. So they started tracking every individual's purchases. And from their purchases, they would predict what would be the most qualified marketing materials to send to those people through the mail. They got in trouble because they sent pregnancy and motherhood related marketing to a 15-year-old girl. The family obviously was very upset that they were doing this, but it did turn out that she was pregnant and no one knew about it. So there are problems with this approach, the ethical issues that need to be addressed.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's interesting, the power of this. And the reason why that worked with the girl is that there's certain changes to the patterns of someone's purchases that occur before they get to motherhood. And she had started that chain of purchases, and so she had all the motherhood stuff advertised to her.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Sometimes when somebody uses your computer, your phone, before you know it, they start sending you criminal stuff. So
Okay, thank you for your presentation. The predictive analysis is very good for our country to predict. We have data, we don't with data analyzer. It's possible to send the data or before we need to have a collaboration with data manager before collect information and do a data analysis.
well, that's a good question. When we had our first workshop in June, somebody brought that question. Data is gold, basically. That's why a company like Google, Facebook, they're almost multi-billion dollars because of data. And in Africa, I think people are taking advantage of that. And people have started now forming a consortium that protect data from Africa. So before, I'll answer in two ways. Before you start giving data to somebody, let them make sure that the data belongs to you, and then also giving them condition of using the data, because sometimes it used to happen that you come do experiment from here, they take the data, some even becomes, they get patent for it, and the country or the researcher doesn't get that effect, but it's changing now. Two, about capacity. Capacity of data analysts, data scientists, and bioinformatics is still not Africa will still get, but that is changing. For example, Seen by Africa, last year we had a conference in October. So after the conference, we want to find out if we can just train, because I'm based in the US, but I train people through Zoom. We sent application for only 20 people. And within 3 weeks, we got 400 applicants from all over Africa that want to be trained in data science and bioinformatics. So far, Peace and I have trained 40, from medical doctors to students to professors. We still have 370 to train. I can train people, Peace can train people. So Seen by Africa sponsored 40, and we're looking to train for the rest. I've been training, two of the students were doing their PhDs. One had data for 3 years, but after taking the course, now she's going to graduate because she went through the course and she was able to analyze that data. So we can do that through collaboration. Okay, thank you.
Yes, do you have any other question that missed you online? Those who are online, if you have a question, you can raise your hand and I pick on you. Do you have any other question here?
Sure.
Because there is interesting issue for me regarding the ability to detect the origin of the stream.
To do what?
To detect the origin of the stream.
Yes.
What do you mean by the origin? Do you mean, because till now we don't know the origin of COVID-19 of SARS-CoV-2. So do you mean that, okay, we have SARS-CoV-2, but we get the strain from Egypt, for example, or from Tunisia, and okay, we can take the genomic sequencing and know this is from China, this is from Tunisia, this is from Egypt, or do you know that the origin from scratch?
Yeah, there's a method called molecular evaluation. I mean, it's politics, but the molecular evaluation will give you exactly where that origin came from. You get all these sequences, you align them, you use molecular evaluation method, will tell you exactly where that pathogen came from. But because of politics, people don't want to accept it. Yes, it can tell you exactly where it came from. Through the sequencing, yes, it does. Yeah.
So is the assumption that you already know where SARS-CoV-2 came from? And because of politics, they aren't telling us?
You know, that one, nobody knows. Let's just leave it there. Let's just leave it there.
To give a less politicized example, in the period after the big earthquake in Haiti, the UN sent in people both on the humanitarian side and on the law and order side. And there was an outbreak of cholera. And so Paul Kine did exactly this sort of genomic meta-analysis and was able to actually identify the fact that the cholera being brought to the country by the UN contingent from Nepal. Again, nothing malicious about it. It's just that the troops who came to help the Haitians, one or two of them were infected, and that introduced it to the country. So yeah, this is a new field, I think, is the whole field of forensic genomics.
Yeah.
It's a new field.
Thank you. So as scientists, we should just leave politics apart, okay? we work with it, and then we just follow science. Leave the politicians to do their work.
The origin of COVID, it's not known, but later when you have the new strains, for example, the South African strain, I think Australia, from where it comes.
I mean, the South Africa strain was also a very interesting story because the virus was there, but the South Africa were the first to identify it. But it doesn't mean it started from there. So they reported it because people are doing all the sequence all over the world, but they reported the strain was unique. But who knows? Maybe it came from somewhere else, but they identified it and they paid the price for it. Eventually, the world woke up and said, this is wrong.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. As we have no further questions.